there's absolutely no way I can manage any of this by myself without the help of the management that we have in place here and the people that we utilize and the great team that we have. There's absolutely no way that I could even do this one building, let alone start another building, try to get hired in there, people working. There's a whole thing to that, as we know as owners. We should be able to just start buying real estate like crazy. There should be enough cash flow there to just, I don't have to go to banks. I don't have to go to investors. I don't have to use anybody anymore. Now we're a self-sustaining machine.
You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
All right, leaders, whether you're running a shop, leading a team, or leveling up in your career, you know details matter. And if you're like me, that includes keeping your beard on point. That's why I trust the Bearded Brotherhood. Their beard oils, beard balms, and mustache waxes, among other, are made with all natural ingredients, no junk, no shortcuts, just top-tier quality that keeps my beard looking sharp and feeling great. And let's talk scents. Whether it's their best-selling Woodsman or my personal favorite, Lone Stranger, the Bearded Brotherhood keeps me smelling fresh and my beard stays soft all day. If you take your beard game seriously, this is the stuff that you need. And because you're part of the Limitless Leadership podcast family, I've got a deal for you. Just visit thebeardedbrotherhood.co/lead15 to grab your favorite products and get 15% off in the process, because a great leader deserves a great beard. Now, back to today's episode. We have I'll say a new expert in this thing that we're talking about. But before I introduce who this guest is, I'm going to ask for you listening to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you need to on social media. If you're listening to this episode, go to YouTube at The Bearded Leader and watch this episode, but be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Now, let's get back to the actual show, which with our guest, my friend Erich Schmidt, owner of Schmidt Auto Care. Erich, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
So Erich, also a fellow bearded brethren, but Erich, go ahead and share with the audience who you are, what you do, and talk about this acquisition or this thing that I just alluded to.
Yeah. So I own Schmidt Auto Care here in Ohio. Our location's roughly equally between Cincinnati and Dayton, up the 75 corridor. We've been in business since 2009, so we're running up here in July to 16 years, which is kind of crazy to think. Awesome. So we just acquired our business property and the buildings that are on it. We've been leasing for the last 5-ish years or so. We've had 2 other buildings prior to this as well that we leased. They were, to me, just stepping stones into something that we wanted to build and put together. And obviously right now building is not the greatest of options, especially putting a commercial, service center together. It's quite expensive. So finding something I feel like in my area was my more cost-effective route.
That's awesome. Well, First I want to say congratulations. I know that's a huge milestone for both you and your wife, Laura Lee. I think a lot of folks know her as Lola. Yep. And she is the chief operations officer there at Schmidt Auto Care. And I think she calls herself the princess of processes or something along those lines, which she is fantastic about.
Yeah, she actually got dubbed that name. So she is a moderator on ASOG. If anybody's a member there. If not, go check out Auto Shop Owners Group. It's got a lot of really great information to better your business. There's a lot of helpful insights you find from there. And then we have Ohio Auto Shop Owners Group too, which me and the wife run. But if you're an Ohioan, please jump on there because we're trying to get trainings and knowledge into Ohio. All our trainers left in Ohio because nobody shows up to these things, which is crazy to me. Mm. So, but yeah, she's chief operations officer, and she basically gets the front end and gets things moving. But yeah, they dubbed her process or princess process or process princess or whatever in the moderator group. So they kind of poke fun at her, but she don't veer from them, and it's helped with our success, certainly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, I'm a big believer in people plus process ultimately equals profit. And I know you're great with people. She's great with process. I think y'all are both great at at both of those things. But that is what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and say you guys are a power couple. I mean, you guys are a power couple in the industry. People know who you are. You're great at what you do. And so I'm excited for both of you and for this new milestone that you hit. I'll ask you to share with our audience listening really what the process was like, because there are some folks who are going through the same experience that you were going through, where you're leasing property, you're leasing the building space, but eventually will potentially have the opportunity to own both outright. What was that process like for you guys?
Yeah, so it's always interesting, and it's such a broad question because there's so many ways to purchase a building and to purchase commercial real estate. And then some people, the way that their businesses are set up or their shops set up. So, I mean, I have local shop friends that have zero interest in purchasing their properties, and they just want to lease and do their thing and roll on. We have big plans for our company, and this is really a big first stepping stone for us in making sure that we solidify ourselves in the real estate side of things and in the shop ownership side of things, and hopefully settle us in a little more solid in the financial realm of things. But yeah, the process that we particularly took, we did an SBA loan. So our plans are as a multi-shop operation. I think that's pretty well known for most people that know us. But this is the absolute first step, is buying the flagship property of where we're going to run the majority of our operations out of. So we'll utilize this building as a live training unit. Ideology wise, my idea is that we bring in people when we expand, and we train them into this house and then set them running in the new shop. But the path that we took was a 504A SBA loan. So it's an interesting process if you've never read into it or know anything about it. It's a group of lenders that work with the SBA or private investors, and the private investors, if I understood this part of it right, private investors fund the SBA pool. And then the SBA pool will do underwriting and everything else like a traditional loan. So they're on want a ton of paperwork from you. They're on want a ton of financials, and so forth, which goes back to processes, right? We got to have this documentation of all these things, right? And making sure, I was warned by our business coach and by other people that this is going to be a painful, lengthy process. And so, we fully prepared for it, and it actually wasn't too bad.
Okay.
I attribute most of that to our organization and our company. I could probably put a pretty healthy bet that most people don't document and keep paperwork like we do.
Mm-hmm.
I can most certainly say that about, other shops around here and other businesses, because I talk to them quite a bit. So, your paperwork's really got to be on par, and your financials and your past records and everything. So basically how we started this out is we went to our local bank. We work with community banks. I went through the whole U.S. bank thing and the corporate banking system. We went through it in COVID, and it was an absolute nightmare. I couldn't even hardly operate because I couldn't even get to my bank, let alone do any business with them. So it really turned me off to corporate banks. And I was kind of 1 foot out the door with them already, which I think most people usually are. But that was it. That pushed us over the edge. So we went to a local community bank. They're actually headquartered out of West Virginia, but they are a small bank. It's People's Bank. And so if you're anywhere in this tri-state area of Ohio, maybe Indiana, Kentucky, you're going to West Virginia, you're going to see some People's Banks around. But we also have some people we know in the community that work there, which was also helpful. But the process started out, we approached the bank. We found out that they were SBA specialists. So your bank can actually get a recognition for being a specialist for doing SBA loans and running the paperwork and the process and everything else. So we sat down with a banker, kind of told him our plans. He asked us some questions about the future of our company, kind of the history, wanted to get to know us a little bit. And then what he does, once he gets all that information, some paperwork that he gives us and so forth, he actually goes to the board of People's Bank. The bankers and the board members both review. So he develops a presentation, says, okay, Erich from Schmidt Auto Care is looking for this. And he presents that, and he presents his findings through his questions of asking us. And they basically say, yeah, well, that sounds great, or no, that sounds bad. And so once they approve that, then they move forward to the People's Bank underwriting. So a 504A loan is actually a two-part loan. So it's not just one lender that carries the note for you. It's two lenders. One is the SBA. They'll carry half the loan, or they carry a little more than half of it, I believe. And then People's Bank carries the rest of it. It could be reversed.
How long was the approval process, like the initial approval process? How long did that take?
So the bank actually took us about a week and a half. It wasn't long at all. I mean, it was about what you would see out of a house. Their process was pretty good. After that approval and that underwriting came back and they said, yep, you're good to go. Your paperwork's in order. The numbers look great. We're happy with that. We're going to go ahead and approve that. Then it goes over to the SBA, but you don't go directly through the SBA. You go through SBA underwriters. I believe they're underwriters. So basically what happens with that is we went through a company called Alloy, and they generate all the SBA paperwork. And then I have a specialist that I work with solely. I don't work with 4 or 5 or 10 other people, which is really helpful because we can keep the conversation in one place, know what everybody needs, so we can kind of move through the process quickly. So Alloy then takes pretty much all the same stuff, information that you would give the bank. They ask for some other things as well. And then you present that with Alloy. Now, since COVID is complicated some things, and I wouldn't even say complicated, but they ask additional questions. So now a lot of companies have taken that PPP loan or multiple PPP loans. They've taken the EIDL loans, which are the emergency disaster relief if you got approved for one of those. So the EIDL loan is a low interest, long-term, no guarantor loan, right? So the PPP loans were forgiven loans. So if you did your proper paperwork and you got that stuff in at the right time, you got forgiven on that loan. And we did that. We took advantage of it. We were struggling just like everybody else in that time. So we took those PPP loans, we filed the proper paperwork, and we got that stuff eliminated. So they're happy with that. The only thing that we carry with us is a little bit from the EIDL loan. But they want those information, right? They want to know. It's the same thing with a bank. If you've been bankrupt, do you have any outstanding government loans? The government's very interested in knowing what you have through them, which is crazy because you think they'd be able to look this stuff up, but nobody talks to anybody in the government. So they kind of got to do the fact finding themselves, right?
Yeah.
So once they get all that information, they're going to ask for a ton of tax paperwork, which is to be expected. And then they're going to ask some questions, and it just very much depends on your company and what's happening in it. There are some things they came up and asked us that they just found out through their research, right? And they say, oh, well, what about this? Or what happened in July of 22? We see a huge dip there. And then 2 months later, it came back and you were good. And, oh, yeah, so we had a staff changeover, something, whatever happened. And so they're going to want to know those things. And anytime that you're taking a loan of this size, you probably should have a pretty good answer and some proof to back it up as to why money's here or there or disappeared, or, in even certain instances, they're going, okay, well, we had $1,130 of this income, but where did this income come from? Right. So they almost kind of do a little bit of a miniature audit, per se, to kind of see, they want to know all your expenditures out and in, and, we're looking at that DTI, the debt ratios, and they're going to look at how's your cash flow in your company. If your company is ebb and flow and it's up and it's profitable and it's down for 2 months and it's negative equity and then back to profitable, at that point, that's a sketchy loan to give somebody.
Sure, but this is also another good reason to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and you guys are great with documentation. And something that you alluded to earlier. We talked about Lola and her processes, and I think both of you do a great job of preparation. It's preparing for what's to come, and whether you know it's coming or not, it could come, and so you're prepared for it. And ultimately, when the pressure's on, we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to our highest level of preparation. And the documentation, the processes. I love the fact that we're going to get there eventually, but I love the fact that you're going to turn this flagship store, this flagship location, into a live training unit as well for when, for your future plans of multi-unit shop ownership. And that kind of preparation and the legwork that goes into it, I mean, it really sets you up for success. And it sets you up when you do go through the acquisition process. I would imagine that it wasn't as intensive as you were coached to believe because of the legwork that you guys do day in and day out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we went in with full intentions and I think we've all been through this. If you've ever taken a loan, if you've bought a truck, you probably went through this because trucks are expensive, right? So, and they want to make sure you get that note paid back. But yeah, so they go through a lot of detail oriented stuff. And if you don't have that documentation, and this is not something that you're like, you decide, 15 months ago, hey, I want to buy this building. Like, this is something that you prepare for a bunch of years. So if you're hearing this and you decide, hey, you know what, I think it is a good choice to buy our building and our properties, boy, you better start preparing now, and you better have some good past history records, because they're going to ask for them, and they don't veer off this stuff. The SBA, you might be able to talk your way through on a bank, but you're not talking your way through on SBA. Mm-hmm. It's either there or it's not. It's very black and white. But it was very helpful. Now, we do have a in-house bookkeeper, and she's our chief financial officer. She is amazing. She has stacked away an insane amount of money in 2 years for us, preparing for this down payment and the fees and everything that come along with that. So, having all of our paperwork in line and all this, if it wasn't something that when we got the email from Amanda from Alloy, and she said, hey, I'm looking for this piece of paperwork, this is missing out of this. Oh yeah, I've got this right here. Send it right over. But if I didn't have it, I made a quick group text over to Laura, our CFO, and said, hey, they're looking for this piece of tax paper. Oh yeah, I have this. She emailed it right over. Boom, I emailed it to her. It took 5 minutes to do it. And Amanda's like, great, thanks for getting that over to me so quickly. I would say there's probably a lot of businesses that will take a day or two to get that information to them. And I wasn't trying to play that game. Sure. If they asked me, I wanted to make sure, my goal was to get that paperwork to them within 2 hours of me receiving that email. And that way I ensured myself that I was not inhibiting the process. So if the process did get hung up, it wasn't me. Now, something else we don't talk about a lot is when you buy properties like this, and most of these properties are well past $1 million. And if you're in a city and you're out west or you're on a coastline somewhere, man, you're talking multiple millions of dollars. This is not small chump change. And this is a massive risk that the company takes, if you end up paying more than what you're paying for the lease, right? So you need to make sure your revenue's there. So we did all this figuring, and we knew that with the rate that they were roughly quoting us, that, our payment on the building would be actually a little bit less than what we're paying in lease. But you got to remember your taxes, your property taxes. You got to remember all that stuff, right? Which pushes it up above. But then in the backside, you have your tax write-offs. There are some tricks that you can do once you own the real estate to help eliminate federal taxes and so forth. So there's a lot of things that you do on the tax side of things when you're making this decision that limits and reduces tremendously your tax liabilities.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff that they don't tell you about, but being prompt is, I would say, would be the most important thing in that situation.
So that's some advice to the listener who is considering this: is being prompt, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, doing the legwork, preparation. What else? What other advice? Like, what's some more advice you'd give to someone who's considering this process?
So they're going to look at your business too. You can show numbers all you want to show, and numbers don't lie, and we know that. I mean, anybody that's in these groups, we're all numbers people, and we don't operate off of emotion. We operate off of fact, and numbers are facts. But another thing I would say is make sure that you have the conversation with your banker at the very start. What are your fees going to look like? What's that interest rate? Our interest rates are really high right now. People are buying houses at 6 and 7, even 8%, which is insane if you think about it, considering the cost of homes. Now we can go back and talk about the 70s and the 60s and whatever. I mean, they were 10, 14% back then, but the house also cost $60,000, right? Not $450,000. So it's kind of the same thing in commercial. Commercial definitely has less leeway in those things. So pretty much the markets are going to pick a small percentage rate. We have AAA credit. We've worked on our credit all our life. My wife and I have flawless credit. We've never missed payments on anything. That goes a long way. Your business, if you're unaware of, also has a credit rating. So your business also needs to make sure that, it pays its bills, and especially if you're an LLC or an S Corp or something that's a sole entity, that they're going to look at that business and how it pays bills and how accurate and what's the word I'm thinking? Like consistent you are with paying bills.
Sure.
But a big thing is talking about the fees. How much are these and that? There's an origination fee for loans, like we all know, but then there's SBA fees. There's, I wish I had my paperwork here to look it through. I have it at the house, but there were so many fees. And when we came down to the down payment time, we were excited because we think we were saving a few $1,000s on it. And then they're like, oh, well, you can't cut us a check for the down payment, because we were just going to cut a check for it, right? Half that their requirement in specific was to wire that money. Now I realize it's a very large sum of money. So they don't want that wired to be safe and secure.
Yep.
But our bank charged us $3,000 to wire that money. Right.
Unexpected cost that you weren't planning for.
So here we are right back in the number that we thought we were going to end up paying, when initially we were excited and we're like, oh, we're going to save a few $1,000s out of this down payment. And that just wasn't the case. If anything, we probably spent a little bit more than we were anticipating, but that's kind of part of it. And when you're at that part, that's too late. You're pretty much committed to that. There's a purchase agreement. So when you start your real estate, obviously we talk to our landlord. Now our landlord is an absolute godsend. She is an awesome, awesome person. She helped us put the building together. She paid for a couple renovations in the office, which she didn't have to do, but she offered. She was amazing. But she's getting to the age now. Her husband's passed away. She's getting to the age now where her kids really are all over the country, and she owns like 18 of these big commercial buildings. So they're very prevalent in the area we're in. But she's selling off to all her tenants, basically. And with that, you're going to have a purchase agreement with the building. And basically, this is a contract that ensures that if you're going to do what you say you're going to do, right? My intent is to purchase this building, so that purchase contract is a contract for your intent. Now, with that being said, because we're talking about big numbers, we're talking about some expenses of getting appraisals, getting level 1 or 2 environmentals done, which is something that some shops may not be prepared for. These types of things here are expensive for the buyer and the owner to take care of, right? And somebody's got to pay for that. In our contract, I paid for those items. Typically, the buyer pays for those fact-finding deals. They are required by the SBA because of the type of business we are. Or if your company was a dry cleaner 70 years ago, they're probably going to do a level 2 at that point, right? So be prepared for that. But when you sign that purchase contract, there's always going to be some earnest money, just like a house, and there's going to be some stipulations. If we did not obligate our contract in a certain amount of time, we owed her an additional $25,000 for slow rolling that contract. So it can get very expensive. And if you have saved up just what you need to get the loan done and to get the building purchased, on top of your operating capital, of course, you're going to find yourself in trouble if you fall short on those contracts. Yeah.
So you mentioned some unexpected fees. What else was completely blindsiding to you guys, if anything? Was there anything that just completely caught you off guard in this process?
So the one thing that did catch me off guard, and I don't think the bank loan loan originator was expecting this, but when we got to, so something that's interesting about this is they can tell you you're going to have a 6.6% rate, but you don't know because they don't set that rate until closing. So it's unlike a house when you lock it in and you say, okay, I'm going to do an FDIC loan or we're going to go and, or not FDIC, whatever it is, the conventional loan. Maybe it is FDIC.
FHA, I believe.
FHA, yeah. I'm thinking of the insurance through the bank. Yeah. But so when you do that, typically you're able to lock in the rate at the market rate you sign that contract at, right? So if it's sitting at 4%, then you've locked yourself in on 4% or whatever. So in our particular case with a 504 loan, that is not something that they do. They actually wait to the day or the day before closing to set that, and they pull that right off the market rates as it's happening. So you can hope that the rates go down as you're closing so they can lock that lower rate onto your closing. But that rate is fully floating until you sign those documents at closing, man. And so when we sat down at this one, this was just Friday we did this, what was that, the 31st or 30th or something? They told us our rate, and I said, whoa, wait a second. And we had already signed like a whole heap of paperwork. I said, that's kind of not what was quoted to me. And that's substantially more. It was all 2 3/4 of a point that it went up.
Oh yeah. That's a big number.
That's substantial. Yeah. And especially when you're talking a 7-figure loan, man, I mean, that's substantial. And you're paying, multiple hundreds of thousands in interest. And then typically with a 504, we also have a 5-year payoff penalty. So if I pay the loan off before 5 years, I get penalized for it.
Interesting.
So 5 years is good, though. It gives you time to recoup and get your operations and get some money saved back up, because operations aren't really changing for us, right? So our payments are pretty much the same, a little bit lower. And of course, we'll have to pay our own taxes and stuff this time around. But it allows us in 5 years to really figure out and solidify our financial or our cash flow to say, okay, well, 3 months out of the year, I can do a double payment on this building or whatever we want to do. But my biggest goal is to get this building paid off as absolutely fast as I possibly can.
And if you pay it off after 5 years early, let's say you're no penalty on year 6, for example, no penalty.
Correct. Gotcha, okay. So after 5 years, you could pay it down to next to nothing, and then at the 6th year, just make a balloon payment out to it, and boom, you're paid off, and you're good to go. Our idea is to acquire this building and 3 more businesses. By my numbers and what I calculate, and I could be wrong on this because, again, I'm not a multi-shop owner yet. I have done tons of research. And I have done tons and tons of talking with everybody. My accountability coach is Cecil with Institute. And, those guys know their crap when it comes to acquisitions and mergers. And so, I pick him and Michael's brain quite a bit on that stuff and try to develop an idea in my head of where we want to go. But far as calculations, far as money and cash flow goes, in a perfect world, if my other shops operated like the one we're in right now, after building 4, we should be able to cash flow another building and another building. And once we get to that 6th building or that 7th building, if we decide to go that far, 6 is really where I want to be at right now. We should be able to just start buying real estate like crazy. There should be enough cash flow there to just, I don't have to go to banks. I don't have to go to investors. I don't have to use anybody anymore. Now we're a self-sustaining machine, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now it just goes, how far can you push yourself as an owner and as a leader in developing your management structure and your employee structure and your culture, your self-sustaining culture, right? To make this machine work, right? Because I can buy buildings until I'm blue in the face, but if I can't manage my culture to continue self-sustaining and self-governing, it's in vain, because your stores are going to falter at that point. So, there's one thing about spending the money and being able to spend the money, but if you don't have your systems, your processes, and your people in place to help you do
That's it.
that, you can't. And the thing is, we have roughly, what do we have? We have 8, 10, like 10 two-post lifts, something like that. But we have total of 14 bays, including flats. And there's absolutely no way I can manage any of this by myself without the help of the management that we have in place here and the people that we utilize and the great team that we have. There's absolutely no way that I could even do this one building, let alone start another building, try to get hired in there, people working. There's a whole thing to that, as we know as owners. And, starting a second building after we get this one going and solidified from the purchase is impossible. You just can't be in two places at one time. And I might be 20 miles away from my other store,
Right.
because I want to go down towards Cincinnati. That's where I'm from. Most people I know is down there, and I'm familiar with those areas. So I'm more comfortable doing business down there. But, without the staff and the process procedures, it's just not going to happen.
You guys are great developers of people, and that's really what leadership is all about. But I'll ask you to put it in your own words. If I were to ask you, Eric, what does leadership mean to you? How would you answer that question?
So leadership to me is empowering people to do greater than you and to see your visions to do greater. I want people to see my initial vision and what we want to grow in this industry, and then I want them to make it better, right?
Talk to the owner who hears you say that and immediately has this scarcity mindset and thinks, well, I don't want to work myself out of a job, or I don't want to work myself out of, I'm the one who needs to be in charge. I'm the one who needs to be talk to that person who has that fixed mindset, where we can shift the perspective to a growth mindset.
Yep. You're your own worst enemy. Every time that we hit our numbers or they exceed their goal, and they did that a week ago here, they did one of the biggest goals since this group's been here. Guess who was in North Carolina on vacation riding motorcycles?
You.
And not
And that's the
one
way it should
single,
be.
and
Yeah.
it is, and not one single phone call was made to me. Now,
Love that.
depending on what was transpired between Laura Lee holding the fort down and them, but she's probably running her greenhouse. She's probably uninterrupted by that. But yeah, you're your own worst enemy. And I know it's really scary, man, because the pool of humans that we have to work with is not great in our industry. But the only way that we can make this better and make the people that we're trying to hire superstars and rock stars is by hiring the superstars and rock stars and then nurturing those people to produce more of those superstars and rock stars.
And you guys do a fantastic job of that. And that's why I say together, y'all are a power couple. Individually, y'all are great. Together, you can go fast alone. You can go way further together. And I'm really blessed to know both of you and call you friends. I'll ask you, you shared a lot of information, a lot of great information. You shed a lot of light on some things that some people, including myself, may have not known. But I'll ask you, in terms of advice, more advice I'm going to ask you for. What's the greatest advice that you've ever received from a coach or mentor?
Well, I thought a long time ago when I was first starting and knew nothing about business, I got given some advice, and it said, it doesn't matter what you sell. It doesn't matter what kind of things move out of your business. You have to at least make $1 on that. And there's some truth to that, right? But as I became a more involved, better businessman and less of a technician in that transition, I realized that's not altogether great advice, right? Because there has to be profitability. Even though you sold that part for $1 more, there's no profitability in that, right? That got sucked up by your business. So, it's really hard to wrap my brain around all the great advice I've been given by all of these fantastic people I've met over the years. And I can just say that the best piece of advice that I think that I was ever given that would come to mind right now would be, don't ever veer from your heart. Meaning, if you have a process that you don't take in used parts or parts, customer supplied parts, don't do that. I don't care if it's your best friend. Don't veer from it, because when you veer from processes, it may feel good at that particular time helping somebody out, but the only thing you're doing is damaging your company. You're making things inconsistent for the consumer, which they don't like. And you're taking a lot away from your employees as well.
Love that. I think that's great advice. I appreciate you for sharing that. I appreciate you for being here, Eric. This will not be your last time on the Limitless Leadership podcast. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to force you to come back.
Well, I'll come back. You don't have to force me, man. We like you.
All right, man. Well, hey, I like you too. I appreciate you guys. And thanks again for being here. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget to smile today. Have a great day, everyone. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.